My name is Dr. Kevin Pecca. I wanted to make a podcast that exposes people to the true miracles of life and health. All the guests on this show have been specially picked because they bring something positive to the world. They have some of the most amazing and inspiring life stories. These people have a passion for living, healing, and leaving the world better than they found it. There is something inside these people that made them keep fighting through all the tough times, even when people told them it was not possible. They carried on and made their lives beautiful again. And now they are sharing their experiences with the world. This is the Expect Miracles podcast. Enjoy the show. Today on the Expect Miracles podcast, we have Dr. John Hilpisch. Dr. Hilpisch is a Blair Upper Cervical chiropractor out of Minnesota. Dr. Hilpisch has been an upper cervical chiropractor for a long time now and is still as passionate as ever at what he does. Dr. John shares his amazing story that ultimately landed him on the path of being an upper cervical chiropractor. It is amazing to see how everyone's journey is all connected. Even though it may not make sense at the time, if you stay the course, it ultimately works out in the end. Dr. John shares the miracles he has seen in his office and also goes into why there needs to be an upper cervical chiropractor in every major city in the world. Please welcome Dr. John Hilpisch. Dr. John, how are you?
I'm doing great, Dr. Pecca.
John, where are you located?
My practice is in Lake Elmo, Minnesota, Kevin.
Minnesota.
Yeah, it's a suburb of St. Paul. We're right on the Wisconsin border.
Beautiful. And are you from up there?
I am. Migrated too far. I grew up in Lake Elmo. I practice in Lake Elmo. So my family's still here as well.
Nice. How did you like growing up north?
Well, I know no difference, but now as I'm getting older, I wonder why I'm here.
It gets cold up there.
It's horrible. It's too long. I don't mind winter. It's just about 3 months too long.
Yeah. And so, Dr. John, how did you get into the chiropractic profession?
I didn't start out as thinking I was going to be a chiropractor. Back in high school, I thought something about being a healthcare professional. Looked at how long it took to be a doctor. I said, I'm not going to school for that long. So physical therapy was kind of my first option. I shadowed a friend of mine's dad who had his own physical therapy clinic, and it looked quite fun and exciting, and it looked like a challenge. And so went to a school that allowed me to take my prereqs. I was a football star back in high school, so to speak. And so I went to this small Lutheran college in Minneapolis and didn't really take academics all that seriously, Kevin. So had a lot of fun with my college experience. My grades started to slip a little bit. And then as fate have it, I broke my forearm in about 7-8 places. And so my career was open. Yeah, it was, and I put plates and pins in. And so my football career was over at that point in time.
Was that your dominant hand too?
It was not.
Okay.
It was not. But I adjust better with this arm now. It's kind of fun.
That's great. Yeah.
I probably changed majors about 3 or 4 times because my grades started to slip, and to get into the physical therapy program was very competitive. So my grades were not that good. So I started looking at being an engineer, and then I was going to be a medical tech, and so on and so on. So when I broke my arm, I actually damaged my ulnar nerve. And so I had to go to physical therapy, and I'm sitting across this table from this therapist, and he's trying to get my arm to stimulate and so on. And I was telling him what I was going to do. And he said, I didn't have very good grades. I think if you just kind of buckle down here, maybe you can get back into the program. So I thought, all right, that's what I'm going to do. And then I had a call from a kid that I worked at a grocery store with back in high school. And he said, what are you doing? What are you doing? Back and forth. And he was in chiropractic college. And I thought, really? And I knew I knew he had gone to the local community college that was not too far from my house. And I said, do those credits actually transfer, and do they accept them at the chiropractic college? I said, absolutely. So I dropped out of the private school, went to community college, and started taking my class. Kind of funny because I had a D in chemistry, so I had to retake chemistry. I was taking chemistry and organic chemistry at the same time. And you remember those?
That is tough stuff, man.
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah. I hated chemistry. Anyway, so that was kind of God sat me down, broke my arm, I think on purpose to kind of get me back involved. And so I enrolled at Northwestern College of Chiropractic. That's here in Minneapolis. And to be honest with you, it was just the closest school. I had no idea that there was a difference in philosophies or how they trained you. So,
any chiropractic adjustments up until now?
No, none.
Wow.
So yeah, it wasn't like, well, I'll take that back. My mother went to an old Palmer grad, and it was just your typical 1960s chiropractic office. My middle back, I had Sherman's growing up, so my mid back kind of bothered me a bit. And so I had some just manual adjusting, and I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I remember getting home, and my brother, my 14-year-old, was like, let me show you what this guy did to me. So, very non-specific moving of the bones. And so I could see myself doing this. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, so went to Northwestern, graduated. They did a good job of getting me through my boards. I mean, they did a really excellent job there. And not until I started seeing patients, and I had the advantage of working with a guy that was a very successful full spine chiropractor.
Mm-hmm.
He helped me along. He brought me to Dr. Charlie Ward, was his consultant, his management firm, him and Kirby Landis. And those two had a beautiful model as far as how to run an office and how to train staff. It was just an absolute godsend. And so that got me on the path to being a good chiropractor and running a good chiropractic office.
Which is very important as well. Yeah.
It's huge. And so I had that huge advantage. But then I was going to be an associate with him. I was going to be his first associate, and he wasn't quite prepared to take on an associate. So we parted ways, and my own practice 9 months after I graduated.
Wow.
My dad co-signed on my first business loan, and we kind of went off, took it from there. So didn't know anything about upper cervical, Kevin. It was never exposed to me. I can remember a kid at Northwestern had a Sherman T-shirt on, and it said something about straight chiropractic, and I thought, what is that? What is this?
Yeah.
And so I started in practice, and things went well. Came across another colleague of mine who I graduated Northwestern with, and he was going to basically give up his practice and go be a missionary with his family in Africa. So he gave me all of his equipment.
No way.
Yeah. And so in this grocery bag was a mix match set of cassettes, and they were Reggie Gold tapes. And so I started listening to these cassette tapes in this little cassette player that I got when I subscribed to Time magazine. So it was just this little blue, it was just this cheesy little cassette player. And I started listening to Reggie Gold. And it was just like, oh my gosh, there's a philosophy behind chiropractic that I had no idea.
What's it like listening to those Reggie Gold tapes? Because they are literally gold. Like I've heard great things. I've never listened to one though, but.
Well, they were, I think, well done. It wasn't like he did them in his basement. I think he probably had them digitally mastered or whatever, but they were good quality, but I only had like 4 out of the 7. And so, I got bits and pieces of it, but it absolutely brought me into a different dimension. I didn't know anything about chiropractic, the philosophy of chiropractic. I thought it was just, you look at the T9 nerve and that goes to the adrenal gland. So we're going to push on T9 and try to get the adrenal glands to work better. You know? So it changed my mindset into my role as a chiropractor. And so I started to think more philosophically in what my role was for my patients. And that was to find the subluxation, analyze the spine, and then remove the subluxation best that I could at the time, of course.
Yeah.
A full spine model. And so started to tap into Sherman a little bit, went to a couple of seminars down there. Actually, the first straight seminar I ever went to was in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, and that was an ADIO seminar. And Gary Dunn and Terry Romberg brought together, I'm going to say, probably 20 to 25 straight chiropractors.
Now, Dr. John, for the audience that's listening, that might be a funny term for them. What is a straight chiropractor other than like a regular chiropractor?
Right. So the word straight today, Kevin, obviously means something different than it was. It was a spearhead. And what straight chiropractic basically is that we do not treat symptoms. We do not add supplements. We don't add heel lifts. Our job as chiropractors is to find the misalignment in the spine, adjust that segment, take the pressure off the nervous system, and let the body express itself naturally. That's our only role. So we don't add in anything else. So straight means we're just straight chiropractors versus mixers, which would mean we mix in physical therapy and we mix in therapy, we mix in nutrition, and we mix in rehabilitation facilities and all those things. So straight just means all we are chiropractors, and we don't add anything to that, which was really quite because I was doing it all, Kevin. I had a differential machine, I had hot packs, I had ultrasound, and so on and so on. So that, to me, looking back on it, if you don't know how to adjust, if you're not trained how to adjust, the spine will never respond. So you have to add all these other things to placate your patients and try to get them to feel somewhat better. So going back to this ADIO seminar, a friend of mine and I, we went down there, and it literally opened my eyes to a completely new world. It's like I opened the curtain to a whole new world, and each speaker hit me on a different level, and it was just like, wow. And it's just one speaker after another. And they had an open mic at the end of the conference, and they're like, if you experience something this weekend and you want to share with everybody, please feel free to come up. And I'm the guy that sits in the back of the room. I'm not the guy that's going to stand up there and talk. So I thought, if I don't get up there and say something and kind of bind myself to this experience, I'll probably just go home and forget about it. And so I went up there and said, hey, listen, my name is John Hilpisch, and I'm a mixer. And they all laughed. of like an AA meeting, you know, and all laughed, and I said, I will make my commitment to all of you in this room. I'm going to go back to my office on Monday, get rid of my pinwheel and my hammer, and roll my interferential machine into the back room and become a straight chiropractor. And the whole room just exploded. I remember walking back, and I don't know if you know Arnaud Brunet. He's a French chiropractor. He's got this really thick accent, and he grabbed me by both shoulders, looked me in the eye, and said, "I love you." And he kissed me on both cheeks, you know. And
That's
it was
great.
just, yeah. And so, but that was it. That was my very first transformation in chiropractic. So now I went from being a mixer to a straight. All right?
Yeah.
And what that did, Kevin, for me was open my eyes to the fact that everyone has a spine. Most everyone has a subluxation or a misalignment that is interfering with their full health potentials. And so with that, it just opened up the whole world for me.
Absolutely.
My office exploded. I got families in, I got kids in, I got grandparents in, because like, I don't care if you can afford it or not, your family needs to be in here. So I was seeing volumes and volumes of patients using the full spine mode and model. And so it didn't take very long, Kevin, to figure out, because I really believe that if we can find a kink in the cord, if you can find interference in the nervous system, you remove that interference, we should see health realize itself at a higher potential. But that didn't happen very often. And it's like I was seeing volumes and volumes of people, and it's like, where are these little, you would call them chiropractic miracles?
Right.
Where are these changes, and why aren't I seeing them? And so it's like, well, the philosophy is sound. I believe in that. I'm not changing that. So it must be my technique. And so I had no exposure to upper cervical at all at Northwestern. So I didn't know where to go. I remember sitting, taking histories on my patients, and they're telling me all these problems. I'm shaking my head, yes, but in my mind, I'm shaking my head, no. It's like, no idea if I'm going to be able to help you, because my technique isn't supporting my belief. So it was kind of a, where do I go from here? It wasn't like the age of the internet where I could Google, how do I get my patients better? What is a different chiropractor?
Yeah.
Again, the same buddy that went to the ADIO seminar with me had went down to a DE seminar in Atlanta. So Sid Williams, again, that was kind of a forum for straight chiropractors. And one of the chiropractors that spoke was Michael Kale. Michael Kale took over BJ's HIO technique and was proliferating it and giving seminars, and had a very successful training facility down in Spartanburg, South Carolina, which happens to be where Sherman College is.
Ah, okay.
And so he said, we got to go. We got to go. I'm going to bring you back there. We're going to listen to this guy, because this is the missing link, because he was in that same boat as I was. And so I remember I had a frequent flyer ticket. That was back in the day where you literally got a certificate. If you had so many miles accumulated, they give you a ticket. Here's a free flight. My office was a mess at the time. I had papers and files all over, because I was bowing down to the insurance company. I'm writing reports, and I got all these files laying all over it. And so it's like, all right, I got this free ticket. We'll fly down to Atlanta. We'll see this guy about this upper cervical technique. And I couldn't find my ticket. I think my office manager cleaned my office. It's like, oh, Dr. Hilpisch, look at your office. And it was clean, but I couldn't find a ticket. I thought, I got to do this. So I went, one of the hotels had like a Northwest Orient outlet where you could buy tickets, $785. I paid for the ticket back in 1992. Like,
one way?
Well, no, but I was planning on coming back. So yeah, it went both ways, but yeah.
But so you couldn't find your
I couldn't find it. No.
Man.
Yeah. So I said, all right, this is something I really got to do. So I just coughed up the money, went down, and it just made perfect sense. So I started reading volume 18 and the upper cervical specific and the subluxation specific, and I understood how the spine worked and how it didn't work, and how the interlocking mechanisms of the joints below C3 didn't allow for misalignments enough to put pressure on the cord or on the spinal nerve roots. And so it made perfect sense to me. And so again, now I'm kind of in that limbo stage where I don't have the technique. I have it in the back of my mind, and how do I get there? So I started going to the seminars down in Spartanburg, and it was unique. He had a unique personality, to say the very least. He was very, very high energy, but there was something that didn't click with me with his personality. I loved the philosophy. There was a kid that I had inspired to be a chiropractor. He was at Sherman at the time, Kevin. So in between one of the breaks or after one of the sessions, I sat down with this kid and was talking to him. And he said, well, for the people that don't know, Sherman was based on upper cervical rationale. That's all they taught for years.
Right, yeah. Years. They're very sound in that, yeah.
That's all they taught. And so he was down there, and he actually tried to go to Northwestern for a couple semesters, and he knew the philosophy. He was trying to fight every student at every break, and he just couldn't do it. So he ended up going down to Sherman, which was really gutsy at the time, because Sherman had accreditation issues. And I think only 9 states in the union would accept a Sherman grad. So in other words, they didn't have accreditation, and so therefore you couldn't practice there. You didn't have a valid chiropractic license. So he took a big chance, and he went down there. And so he told me, hey, listen, I'm taking this elective here at Sherman, Perry Rush. taught this class, I believe it was 2 mornings a week, maybe 3 mornings at 7:30. So the elective was really early in the morning. So these kids were dedicated to learning about the Blair technique, and Perry was instrumental in putting some of the great Blair chiropractors out there today. Without him, I think Blair would have probably withered away into just oblivion. So
Definitely,
yeah, Perry was a huge influence on a lot of great Blair chiropractors that then went on.
Who taught him? Dr. Blair or Muncie or
Dr. Blair. So this thing was, he was a wrestler in high school, and he was from Southern California, if I remember right, and ended up going to Weldon Muncie. And Weldon Muncie's in Lancaster, California. And I may have the story a little mixed up, but the point is, went to Weldon, and I think Perry was going to be a medical doctor or some other profession. And he said, no, changed his life, got his body back in shape. And I think he had plenty of concussions. And so Perry ended up going to Sherman. He was in the pioneer class. I think he was the very first class to graduate down there. And somehow he crossed paths with Dr. Blair. And Dr. Blair specifically said, Perry, we need to teach the Blair elective at Sherman, and I need you to do it. So it's kind of like that scene in Wonderful Life where George Bailey wants to leave. But if you leave, Potter's going to take over the board. So Perry changed his entire life to stay at Sherman to teach the Blair technique. So I respect Perry for that and for the dedication that he had. So getting back to my original story. So this student said, the Blair technique is maybe something you want to look into. And I looked into, and Kevin, it just pushed aside a lot of the issues that I was having with just the HIO work. And as you know, Dr. Blair took the HIO work and advanced it. And he talked to Dr. Palmer about that. And Palmer gave him the blessing to take it to the next step. I think Dr. Blair got his PhD from Dr. Palmer. Dr. Blair did.
What were some of the things that were really like just resonating with you, like right off the bat?
Well, the biggest thing, and for those, the audience out there that don't know about the Blair technique, it takes into consideration that God forms each and every spine a little bit differently. What Dr. Blair found was once he started practicing the HIO work, and so at Palmer, when Blair was at Palmer, they were teaching HIO. And so he went back and used the HIO, which is a specific upper cervical technique, went back to his practice in Lubbock, Texas, and learned, again, pretty early on, that some of his patients would respond and hold their adjustments, but the grand majority were not. And so the way I understand it, he put his practice on hold, did a sabbatical, went back to back to Palmer College. They had over 20,000 fully articulated spines. So he started looking at the real life spines. And instead of textbook normal, where the left side of the spine is formed exactly the same as the right side of the spine, he started looking, and he found like about 77% of the cases that the upper neck, where the skull and the atlas meet, is just notorious for having asymmetry. And so there was built-in problems in the way that the analysis system was being used at the time. And so what they thought they were seeing as a rotated atlas was just a
person's natural bone structure.
Absolutely. And so that is what led Dr. Blair to try to figure out. So again, Dr. Blair now knows that we need to take consideration that each and every spine is a little different, but he didn't know how to do that. So then, as the story goes, he was eating a sandwich at the Adolphus Hotel in Dallas, Texas, and this whole protractile view convergence angles theory came into his brain, and he figured out, hey, maybe if we can figure out how that person's atlas angles are formed naturally, and then turn that patient, put them in a head clamp at that particular angle that they're formed at, shoot the x-ray down the line of the joint, we can see the misalignment on the radiograph or the x-ray, which had never been done before. And so, and those principles are obviously what you and I are still using today.
Isn't it amazing with all the new technology we have now, like the cone beam CAT scanning and everything? It's just further proving Dr. Blair's work. It's like making it more clear after all these years later.
It's incredible because the first generation Blair chiropractors, Dr. Topping and Dr. Fiore out in California, these guys have just developed very busy practices. They are not probably as active in the Blair Society as they used to be, but they are the most excited now.
Yeah. I've been to their office,
Yeah, so they're just like, this is absolutely confirmed what Dr. Blair's principles theorized, I guess is what we could say. So there's a big excitement. And I believe Dr. Blair would have been the very first one to continue on investigating. And to the day he died, he was trying to figure out the best way to make the bone move and how to get it to hold in opposite side contacts and same size contacts and double misalignments. And he just never stopped. And unfortunately, there are fractions in the Blair work which have stopped at the 4 major misalignments. And those folks just adhere to the ASR, ASL, PIL, PIR, and that's all. And which is still going to clear out, as you know, the vast majority but they just haven't brought past. And like the HIO work hasn't gone past 37.
Yeah.
I think Dr. Blair would have been the first to embrace the technology changes and the improvements that certainly are still being made in 2018, which is amazing.
Well, and Dr. John, I have a question for you. So a lot of people, like kind of like yourself, they'll go to like a Blair seminar, they'll get all hyped up about it, but it's extremely difficult to transform your full spine practice to a Blair practice overnight. So how did you do that?
That's a great point. And our focus in the Blair Society for many years was trying to get those field doctors to convert over. And because of the difficulty factor, a couple things. I think you have to have a genuine desire to make the change. If you keep one foot on first base and you're going to keep your full spine model and then try to maybe use Blair as a part of your therapy or part of your tool belt, it doesn't work. It just can't work. And so for me, there are things that parallel my life in my practice and in my personal life, in my spiritual life. And it's like, if there's a truth, you have to follow that truth. And there's just no going back. You can't turn back. So once I learned about the straight philosophy, there was no way I was going to go back and to become a mixer. Once I understood the upper cervical rationale, there was no way I was going to go back to a full spine model. And so for me, it wasn't difficult. I mean, it was difficult in the fact that our Blair Society was not organized very well in training and teaching. For so many years, Dr. Blair was the only trainer, the only certified instructor, and he was an absolute, from what I understand, he was a stickler for details. He would make people take the primary.
Yeah, I heard about this. Yeah.
Dozens of times, and before he would even let them touch the spine. So it was a very coveted, very protected technique, which I believe is still very, very important.
Yeah.
And so the doctors that did stick with it and carry through and maybe became instructors became ultimately successful and didn't have time to teach because they had such busy practices.
Yeah.
They were getting such great results. And so doctors like Roger Morrison and Cyril Rastisi, they perpetuated it. They helped continue on with the seminars. Of course, Dr. Muncie did, but it was really, really hard to follow along. The notes that we had were kind of a mixed match of what Dr. Blair's original notes were. It would go from like page 49 to page 87. It's like, did I miss something? Did something not get? And it was just really, really tough. And I'm a visual learner. Some people are audio learners. And, for me to go back and try to study this stuff, it was tough. And so I would go to a seminar, Kevin, my brain would get full and I would just, and I would go back home and it's like, okay, I can try to do the leg checks now for the next 3 months or 5 months or to whenever the next seminar might be. And that was really tough because there was no internet. It wasn't like you could jump on and say, where's the next seminar? It's like word of mouth. It's like, there's going to be people down in Kansas City, in 2 weeks or a month. And so we would continue to see and go down there and learn more and learn more. So it was really a labor of love for me. So it is so much easier, I think, today for somebody that has the desire to become a Blair chiropractor. Because as you know, we probably have half of our society are certified instructors, which is just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Your generation are so dang smart and so intelligent. Our focus now is still trying to convert field doctors to be Blair chiropractors. But if we can catch a young, fresh, open-minded student into becoming a Blair chiropractor, it's so much easier. And so for me, it wasn't difficult. I remember when I got to that point where it's like, I'm going to start converting my practice.
It's the commitment itself is pretty much what you're saying.
Without a doubt. Yeah. It's just the commitment. Yeah. Like I said, you can't keep one foot on first base. So you have to. So, and so the conversion was kind of like this. June 6, 1996 was the day that I started Blair in my office. And again, God has his hand in everything. And my brother's family got into a minor car accident. And I thought, all right, I'm going to start x-raying these guys with the Blair. I got my Bucky to take stereo x-rays. And I got my tilting Bucky and my tube stand. And it was just like, all right, here we go. I had carpet on the floor. I used a rolling chair from the office. And I was just sweating bullets because I had never done it before, And so, but I just like, I've got to do it. I've got to do it. So every new patient from that point forward, I put Blair on them. So they didn't even know that I was a chiropractor. So I was in a strip mall at the time, and our neighbors had a coffee shop, donut shop, and then a big area. And said, can I use your place? Because I want to start exposing my current full spine practice to this Blair technique. And so I said, so we would bring, 40 or 50 people at a time from the practice and say, hey, listen, I'm embarking on a new endeavor, this Blair technique. This is why I love it. This is why I think it should be good for you. And some patients were absolutely all on board with it. I offered all of them free Blair views because it was like I had already taken their money to take their first set of x-rays. And so I was just like, this is A lot of them got on board. Some were like, I'm not sure, doc. I kind of like the old technique. And so as my practice started converting, I saw less and less full spine patients and doing leg checks on my full spine patients. And, oh, no, you're good today. And they turn their head on the table and say, what do you mean I'm good today? No, you don't need to be adjusted, because they're used to getting adjusted every time. Yep. So I had no metrics by which to measure whether the adjustment was working or holding, as we call it. And so those patients, I was more than happy to let them go and see the 99% of the doctors that were still doing full spine. And so I was willing to take that because I had a vision in my brain, Kevin, that if this Blair technique was as good as I envisioned it, and again, I didn't have a success story where I had gotten my atlas adjusted and I saw some great results. I just thought the principle was so sound.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I said, all right, I'm going to do this. And because the network was so small in Blair, it's like, I think people are going to be driving all over the upper Midwest to come and see us because we got this Blair work. And doggone, that's exactly how it is. I'm not proud of it. We don't have enough Blair chiropractors. We need more Blair chiropractors to fill in the gaps in the maps, and not only in the United States, but throughout the world. And so we have patients that drive 5-6 hours one way to get checked.
Oh, absolutely.
And get in their vehicle and drive back that same day.
Plane rides, people coming in from all over. Yeah, like it's wild.
Yeah, I mean, that's great for our ego, but it's not good for the patient.
Yeah.
So, I got better and better. I wasn't a very good chiropractor, Blair chiropractor when I started, but I knew what I was doing was going to be better than I was providing for my patients. So the conversion, I look back on it, was part of my journey. I want to change it for the world. So now my oldest daughter, went down to Sherman. She started Blair right away. It's kind of funny when she called me, Kevin, she'd been through 2 years of undergrad. And she was not going to be a chiropractor. She was like, no way. So 2 years, it was after her sophomore year, and she called and said, well, Dad, what's the best chiropractic college? And I was like, well, who wants to know? Because it's like, you're not going to be one, Yeah, and she said, me. And I said, what? So we had no conversations prior to that. So and I said, well, I thought in my brain, maybe I can get her to Northwestern because selfishly I wanted her to be around home and so on and so forth. And so I kind of said, I can help you and I'll help teach you the Blair technique. I said, but what's the best school? And at the time in my brain, Sherman just had it all. And so she ended up going down to Sherman. And so now my oldest daughter's in practice with me, which is just an absolute honor, and see her doing as well as she's doing. And that's the beauty of the Blair technique, as you know, and our audience may not know, is that it's interchangeable. I can send Dr. Peck a patient that I analyzed, took the x-rays, got an Atlas axis listing on, give them the leg check patterns and the scan pattern. The profession will, the society will perform the exact work and come up with the same conclusions.
Yeah, no, that's so important because anybody could say, I'm going to a chiropractor in the United States, and you have absolutely no idea what they're walking into. So that's why we could send people all the way across country in the Blair technique, and they can get the same exact adjustment, same exact results, and that's a beautiful thing.
It is. It really is. And that, I remember when I attended one of my first couple Blair conferences in San Francisco. It was by the Candlestick Park. It was by the airport. And there was maybe 15, 20 people there. And I'm thinking, here we are, the best chiropractors in the world as far as I'm concerned. And we've got this crappy little hotel, and we've got just a handful of docs there. And when the conference was over, they said, now we have committees that like people to sign up for it if they're so inclined. And I said, well, I'll sign up for the conference committee because I know we can get a better hotel than this. And, And so I got involved in the Blair Society. I'm still involved, not quite as heavily as I was, and got on the board, became the president for a few years because I wanted more Blair chiropractors throughout the world. I wanted, and I knew, and you know, that they're going to move and they're going to need a Blair chiropractor in Missoula, or they're going to need somebody in Reno, or they're going to need somebody in Jacksonville. And if we don't have a chiropractor for them, what are they going to do? Because that became part of their life now, and that's what helping them meet their full health potential. So our society has blossomed, and it's
definitely
it's Dr. Banich, whose office you took over, and her dad that planted seeds that couldn't be uprooted. And so we are on the right path. But anybody listening that wants to be a chiropractor, my gosh, be a Blair chiropractor, your opportunities are endless. I remember
you got the world in front of you.
Yeah. And I remember probably about 8-10 years ago, I spoke at the Blair conference, and I looked up demographics, and I took the top 50 populated cities in the United States, and like 35 of them didn't even have a Blair chiropractor anywhere near them.
Yeah.
Pick your city. You are probably the closest to New York City right now, and then
there's nobody in the state of New York doing Blair.
So I don't know, how many millions of people are in New York City. And and I know people, I've had patients that I've sent up to Dr. Banich's office from New York City. And what is that? The train ride is what?
I'm 12 miles northwest of New York City. I mean, it's a busy city. It could take an hour to get out to Jersey.
Right.
Yeah.
which for the price of your health is nothing. We know that. But yeah, I mean, we need more Blair chiropractors.
There's literally nobody in Europe doing Blair. Like, how do we get people out there?
Yeah, we tried. We had a few chiropractors in Italy. I know Jake Holloway was there. Hallowell was there. So we had a few. I don't know that answer. I wish I had a better handle on that. There are probably some logistics and accreditation issues that may be in play, but I do see us kind of slowly specking the map, here and there. But all of Europe is devoid of that. And, at the Blair Society, our mission statement is to have a Blair chiropractor in every big city in the United States and in the world, and bring Blair to the world. And so I don't know. I mean, and maybe that there's a bigger issue that maybe we need chiropractic colleges in Europe. And maybe, so
very true.
You got pioneers that started Penn State and Sherman just based on their core beliefs and their ferocity for chiropractic. And so that probably is where it needs to start. So guys like you.
Got to get out there.
Yeah.
So, Dr. John, what kind of patients do you see in your office, and what conditions respond really well? And
yeah, we basically, from the womb to the grave, Kevin, we have mothers that will have be under care throughout their pregnancies, and then we will teach them how important it is to get the kids checked, because the birth process is somewhat traumatic. Less traumatic if the mothers are under Blair care during their pregnancy. But yeah, we check newborns, we check children. Kids are so receptive. I don't mean mentally, but I mean they're physically, they respond so well to upper cervical care, and it's very easy to perform on kids. So we have a large adolescent population in our office. We have teenagers and teenage athletes, a lot of dancers, a lot of gymnasts. I had a daughter that was an All-American gymnast, and I wouldn't probably advise anybody to have their daughter in gymnastics. It's just those repetitive actions, they beat the crap out of themselves in practice. But if you're gonna, you better darn well make sure that you got your atlas clear. Lots of adolescents, lots of young adults, lots of young professionals. We have a really large senior population as well. And so it's kind of funny, on our entrance form, we'll have pick one option. Are you looking for emergency care only, or are you looking for care that will enhance your life and help you reach your full health potentials, for the rest of your life? And the seniors always mark that one. It's like they're still looking for the fountain of youth. And I think some of my most rewarding, probably, success stories come with my seniors. Being a straight chiropractor, Kevin, I was thinking about this when you asked me to be on the podcast today. Being a straight chiropractor, I have a tendency not to embellish or get too deep into the patient's symptoms. I advise my patients from day one that when they come in for their checks, they are not to tell me how they feel, either good or bad. That keeps me clear and objective as the chiropractor, because you know how it is. I mean, if somebody comes in and they're really hurting, you may bend a little bit to placate to them. So I don't ask for a lot of feedback. And Dr. Hall, our president of the Blair Society, he and I had this conversation. He thought I'm crazy, but it keeps me grounded. It keeps me clear in my job, and that is to clear them out. And if I cleared them out, I did my job, and then it's their body's job to do the rest. But the cool thing about what we do is that if they follow our protocol and follow our care, we take the Blair views, the full Blair set when they start up. At the 1 year point, we'll do re-exams at the 90-day point and the 180-day point, and then we just do range of motion checks. And then we'll take a lateral cervical at the 1 year point. And the changes that we see are amazing. And I used to shy away from this because when I was full spine, we take re-X-rays and it was worse. And it was just, it was painful. We're seeing disc spaces increase. We're seeing the body reabsorb the calcium spurs. We're seeing curves come back. And I have some patients that can't wait for their 2 year X-ray and their 3 year X-ray and their 4 year X-ray. We're seeing dramatic changes on these lateral cervicals 6 and 7 years into care. And I had one lady, her lower cervicals had expanded almost double with all the exostosis and the spurring. They were twice the size of, like, say, her C3 and C4. Between the 5th and the 6th year, that totally reabsorbed itself. So those results objectively, and that gets our patients so excited as well, because they can not only, obviously they're feeling the changes, but to see that it's really, really rewarding for them, and it's always fun for us to see as well.
Definitely.
So we have had some high ratio success with infertility. I know a lot of doctors will find a certain condition and hone in on a certain listing. So sometimes Meniere's, it's like, look for a PI misalignment.
Right.
So, and again, the listing is how that bone moves. So the atlas is going to move in one direction, it's going to move in 3 directions. So if the force is from behind, it's going to move that atlas upward and forward, which is anterior and superior, either on the left joint or the right joint. And so that's what's called a listing. So when we look at the x-rays, we create a listing for that patient. We then extract the angles from their joints so that we can make the perfect adjustment for that patient based on their anatomy and their particular misalignment. So that's their listing. And so we've probably, Kevin, I'm going to say just conservatively, probably 50 women have become pregnant with the Blair technique in our office.
Really?
Absolutely. And some of it is primary infertility where they just have never been able to conceive. We have secondary infertility where they've had a successful pregnancy and delivery, and then they become infertile from there. And so I think it's on two levels. I think, and I just did a blog on, if you check my website, a lot of fertility blogs, but a lot of it is the hormonal balance in the body. A lot of the hormones that are necessary for conception come from the brain itself. And so when the atlas is out of position, as we know, it's a choke point for fluid coming from the brain and hormones coming out of the brain. And so their body is just not receiving, their bodies are just not receiving the hormone balance that they need to conceive. And then from a structural standpoint, when the atlas moves, it'll push your head to one side or the other, and that causes a chain reaction where the brain will keep the eyes straight with the horizon, so the shoulder gets pushed down, the hip gets pulled up, and it constrains the hips. And so not only the infertility problems, but then the delivery, and I'm writing a couple blogs on that as well. So the deliveries of patients that are under Blair chiropractic is minimal. So the complications and the pain and the long labor can be almost predictably eliminated if that mother stays under care. And we have a protocol for that, and we'll check our patients. And then as they get closer, because their body's making so many physical changes in that last month of their pregnancy, we check them a little bit closer. Again, checking doesn't mean adjusting. So just to be clear for our patients, a patient comes in to get monitored and checked. So much of what we do as Blair chiropractors is not adjusting. So we don't need our patients to be there 3 times a week to be adjusted. That was the old model. We rely on the involuntary nervous system to reset the involuntary muscles, to reset the alignment. And so it becomes increasingly difficult to come out of alignment if you make the proper specific adjustment in the upper neck. So these mothers' pelvises are in balance. You may or may not know, but the placenta attaches to the pubic symphysis, and when the atlas is off, the pelvis becomes distorted, and it tractions the placenta, so the baby's head cannot move down into the birthing canal the way that it should. So for all those pregnant mothers or pregnant mothers wannabe, Blair chiropractic is such a huge, huge component to it. So, and as you know, Meniere's symptoms and post-concussion symptoms. I had a kid that we just did his 1-year exam. He's a senior in high school, and you know all about concussions, but this kid came in, he had his 3rd concussion. The doctor said he will never play sports again. They said, you can't play sports again, you're done. Kind of a devastating blow for an athlete. And so parents came in and they had heard about us and they weren't quite sure. The mother was super, super skeptical. And I said, well, this is what we do. And the reason he's still lingering with his concussion symptoms is because of the choke point and the lack of cerebrospinal fluid flow around the brain and the cognitive issues. And so started to get him adjusted, obviously started to feel better. And he was like, I feel great. I want to play ball again. You know, he want to play baseball, soccer player, football player. The parents are like, wow, we don't know. Should we bring him back to the other doctor? And I said, what's the point? You don't need him back to the other doctor. He's the one that said he could do nothing for him. So we got him feeling better. And so the parents were like, well, what happens if he gets another concussion? I was like, well, then we just get his atlas adjusted again. There's no further damage that's going to be done. And so they were like, okay. And so went through baseball season, went through football season, got a concussion basketball, and got back in, got him readjusted. He was back on the court like in a week and a half. Now he's going off to soccer again. So that's life-changing. Had a guy in as a new patient 2 days ago. He was a prospect football player. He was getting all these big-time offers from Big Ten schools and was back returning a punt. A guy tackles him as he's catching the ball, takes the guy's helmet under his chin, knocks him out cold. 15 years of cognitive anxiety. He went through college. He said, I don't know how I did it. Went through law school. He said, I don't remember the 4 years in law school. He said, I was depressed, anxiety. The doctors put him on an anxiety net, and then he got married, and he said the marriage was enough to at least get my endorphins enough where I could kind of function. But he said, I can't take it anymore. And so, as you know, we gave him his first adjustment yesterday. He came to my workshop last night. I could see his eyes were already clear. Man. So those are the kind of things that those 15 years of his life he'll never get back. Yeah. And in addition to that, if he doesn't find out about what we do, Kevin, his whole life is screwed. You know, I got a woman, she had a bike accident. She was probably 55 years old, went over her handlebars, landed on her chin, and just became increasingly anxious. She became nervous, paranoid to the point where she lost her job. They put her in a group home. She couldn't drive anymore. She came to our workshop, and my daughter gave the workshop. And after the class, she said, I don't know if you can help me. I just want to show you something. So she laid down on her back on the floor in our office, and she goes into these convulsions, Kevin. And so she just convulsed. And so that's every time I lay down, that's what happens to my body. And so we talked her through it, and she didn't want to get x-rays. And she's like, I don't know. I don't think so. And she couldn't get beyond the anxiety. And so honestly, Kevin, this is something as a young chiropractor, sometimes you have to do. I said, you know what? We're not going to x-ray today. You need it, but you go home. You think about it. You pray about it. And I think we can help you, but you don't need to make that decision today.
Yeah.
You know, I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere. You know,
Yeah.
So she came back, maybe a week later and said, okay, I thought about it and I think this is, and it wasn't a lightning in a bottle. We gave her an adjustment. It all came back. It was just slowly and slowly.
Yeah.
She started to sleep a little bit better, and so at 3 months, she was like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to pick up my guitar again. I started to play a little bit. And so she started to get it all back. And she used to have to take like the public Meta van to come to the office for her visits. She couldn't drive. What kind of burden on the healthcare system is that? She's on Social Security. She's on the medications. The system is supporting her, and she would have just drowned in oblivion. No one should have just been a statistic. And she was, so on the other side of that, she starts coming back to life. You can see her eyes are getting brighter, and she's talking, and she's riding her bike again. And all of a sudden she's got her job back, and she's driving again. And she's
it's so amazing.
Yeah. And it's just, so that's the kind of stuff that becomes the norm, but at the same time, it's never any less refreshing.
Yeah.
That keeps an old guy like me pushing through and giving my workshop that I've given probably, I don't know, twice a month for 30 years. I don't know what is that. So, I mean, and I still get excited about talking about what we do and helping people understand what we do. And so I still love it to this day. I'll never retire. I might tool back a little bit, but I couldn't ever not think about treating patients and giving Blair care to people. So,
yeah. Dr. John, there's another thing I wanted to ask you. You mentioned it a couple times during the podcast, and I feel the same way. You mentioned it like when you broke your arm, like a lot of people would view that as just devastating and like the world working against them. But you viewed it as it was destiny or fate. It led you on the path you're on today. Where does that come from?
Well, I mean,
you're pretty much saying it's all connected. I love that. It's all connected. Everything happens for a reason. Yeah.
It does. And I'm a Catholic. I'm a very devout Christian. And it comes from my belief that I'm here on earth to form some sort of purpose. God gives us skills. And if I don't use those skills, I know at the end of my life, I'll have to pay for that. So I'll have to atone for those days that I didn't push it as hard as I could. So I just felt like God led me down these paths. So each one of those little stops along the way, it was my broken arm. It was the kid's call that I went to college with. It was getting the tape from my friend who was going to be.
That's unbelievable. I love that.
So then going to ADIO seminar and then becoming a straight chiropractor, then my buddy going to DE. And then and the one thing I didn't tell you is that the kid that got me into Blair, the kid that was going to Sherman, his name was John Schwartzbauer. John Schwartzbauer became the president of Sherman College.
Wow.
I got him into chiropractic care. He got me into Blair, got it onto the board of trustees. I became the president. So I ultimately became his boss again. So I always can one up him, So I think God's got a hand in everything, Kevin. So I believe that is what drives me to be better. I mean, I could have kept my old x-ray machine, but it's like, okay, I'll get a digital x-ray machine. Well, just about that time I got the digigital. Now we're doing the CTs. It's like, I'm sure.
Are you doing the CTs in your office?
No, we are not. We're not yet. So it's one at a time. So it's, I think it comes from inside. You have to listen to what your internal voice is telling you and don't ignore those hunches. I think your consciousness becomes greater. It's like you never see the tire ads in the paper until you need tires. You know what I mean? So you open up your mind to the possibilities. Like, I need something new. The opportunities will be as clear, crystal clear as you've ever seen. So open your mind and be open to the possibilities. Something's not right. If something's not congruent with your faith or with your profession or with anything in life, you have to be willing to make that change. That goes with relationships as well. So that would be my suggestion to young chiropractors and any of our patients as well. It's like, if you don't like your job, if you're dreading, you get a pit in your stomach every Sunday night that you got to go back to work. It's like, no, you got to find what you love to do. The key is to get paid for it. And I had a mentor, Tony Palermo, who's from Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Great man. And he taught me a lot of things, but we can't go to the office to meet our needs. If you need recognition or you got to find that outside of your practice. You are there to serve your patients. And so there are things that I've looked back on life and say, I was trying to get that out of my practice and that was not the right intention. And so once I made that clear and got that clear in my brain, I opened that door and it's like, God, you send them, I'll serve them,
Yeah.
So
that's great. That's great. And one more question for you. At the end of the show, I usually ask my guests, if there's one piece of advice that you've taken with you through the years that have really stuck with you that you would like to gift the audience? Could be anything. What would that be?
Work on yourself. I think once I understood the success principles and what it takes, because you have to be right with yourself. So if it's a self-help book, if it's self-help, I used to listen to cassettes after cassettes after cassettes. Charlie Ward was a mentor of mine, and there was an organization called Nightingale Conant, and they would send you a cassette series every month, and I would just listen to those cassettes over, back and forth to work. There's so much dead time.
Yeah.
I mean, what do we fill it with? Your generation, it's on your phones, you're checking your Facebook, and it's like, work on yourself. If you took half the time that you're spending on your phone and working on yourself, you would be so much better as a person, as a chiropractor. So work on yourself.
Love that. Dr. John, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find your practice on the internet and everything like that?
You can find any of us Blair Chiropractors on blairchiropractic.com. Our website is hilpischchiro.com. So if you want to find out more about us and some of the blogs that we were talking about earlier, Hilpisch, Hilpisch, chiro.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much, John.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, subscribe, give us 5 stars, and leave a review. It really helps boost the podcast and spread the good word. My chiropractic practice is located in West Orange, New Jersey at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. You can also find us on Facebook at Montclair Upper Cervical Chiropractic. All of my information is on my website at drkevinpecca.com, drkevinpecca.com. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel at Dr. Kevin Pecca for podcast episodes, patient testimonials, and educational videos. I have daily affirmations and inspirational quotes on Instagram at Easel Affirmations, EASEL Affirmations. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at drkevinpecca@gmail.com, drkevinpecca@gmail.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Cheers.